I'm here today with our good friend, Kathy Izard. Kathy is the author of a new book titled The Last Ordinary Hour, Living Life Now That Nothing Will Ever Be the Same. Kathy is an award-winning author, speaker, and change maker working on homelessness, housing, and mental health in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her first memoir, The 100-Story Home, won a 2017 Christopher Award, and her work has been featured on the Today Show as well as NPR, inspiring people to be change makers in their community. Her children's book, A Good Night for Mr. Coleman, encourages children that they are never too young to make a difference. Kathy teaches through her company, Women, Faith, and Story, and Kathy's also attended and spoken at various Writing for Your Life events. So Kathy, it's so wonderful to have you here to be able to talk about your new book, and many, many congratulations on that.
Thanks. And we have book twins because mine came out on May 15th and Brian's on May 18th. So it's exciting to be here and talking all things books. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, it's always a pleasure, Kathy. And I really love all the books that you've written, the things that you've done. And, I'm anxious to see continued success and continued progress on multiple fronts.
Thanks. You as well.
So I just kind of touched on your background. So before we get into the new book, can you kind of give us a little bit more depth on that?
Right. So my first book, I was not planning to be an author. I think I fall in the category at that time of accidental author. There was a story that I wanted to tell, and it was about how I quit my job in 2007. I'd been a graphic designer and marketing for over 20 years. But I'd been a volunteer at a soup kitchen, and I had a very life-changing experience there. And I ended up quitting my job, closing my design business, and going to work for that soup kitchen. At the time, that's all we did was serve soup. But I ended up being in charge of a housing program. We ended up running a capital campaign. We've housed hundreds of people since then. I was in charge of building a whole apartment building. So I wanted to tell that story. I wanted to tell the story of how Charlotte housed the least among us, the chronically homeless, and tell that story. So I tried to figure out how to write a book. It took me 6 years to write that one. And that came out in 2016. It's The 100-Story Home. For those of you who are listening to this, I self-published that book. And then I did the very unusual, I actually got a book contract after I self-published. So that book came out again in 2018. So anyone who's listening, I want you to know that you should self-publish. You should absolutely get your words in the world, but also know that you can get a contract. And so I started doing writing and speaking around that book. And I did a children's book that goes with it, as you mentioned, which, that was a whole different process of book writing and book publishing to figure out an illustrated picture book version of 300 pages of the topic. But so I've done those two, and now the third book is launching a little. I didn't plan to write that book, but so here we are. I'm 3 books in. I can't say I'm an accidental author anymore. I'm definitely an intentional writer, and trying to be more intentional every day because I realized I love writing and I love doing this work. So,
well, the story behind 100-Story Home, both the story that you tell in the book and the story of publishing the book are both just amazing to me.
Yeah, and I'd like to, I on Women, Faith, and Story, which is a website I started for online learning. We're doing in-person learning now too, and retreats now that COVID is done. I really try to encourage women who, maybe they were just writing journals for themselves or, think that they're not a writer. I think we all have a story, and I think being connected by our stories is so powerful. So I really tried to help writers get their words in the world. So if anyone's watching this, I do like to help people who are trying to figure out the very complicated world of self-publishing and traditional publishing. That's kind of been a sideline passion that's grown over the last 6 years.
So what drove you to write the new book?
I was, so the new book is called The Last Ordinary Hour, and I really was never planning to write this book. It came out of an experience in 2013. My husband, who was probably the most fit person anyone knew, certainly the fittest person I know, he ended up having a very catastrophic cardiac crash. He had a heart attack. It was not heart disease, it was rare disease. And so we kind of woke up after this moment of, very dramatic, like some scene from Grey's Anatomy. We're in an ambulance, we're being rushed to a hospital. We had no idea what was happening. And we wake up grateful that he has survived this. only to learn that the type of heart attack he has was caused by something called spontaneous coronary artery dissection. It is supremely rare. He's one of only 10 men at the time that had survived this type of heart attack. And the real, I think, kicker for it is you can't just be grateful that you survived, because we found out that it most likely will happen again. And the next time you might not be as lucky. So it started us on this path of trying to figure out, how do you wake up and move forward in your life when you're just in sheer terror that we could be in an ambulance again, that anything could happen again. I had 4 kids. We have 4 children. My terror of being a widow was very real. And so I was writing for myself to try and understand what was happening. I was trying to work my way through this. And in the 100-Story Home, I wrote kind of my path to faith. The subtitle of that book is a memoir of finding faith in ourselves and something bigger. And I realized what I really believed in was kind of a sunshine God who showed up to miracles for housing people who are experiencing homelessness. But I don't think I really believed in a God that was going to sit with me in this really dark place and help me out of, my terror. And that's what I had to find, because as I wrote in the book, medical emergencies cause spiritual emergencies. And I had to figure out what I believed in and how I was going to live in faith, not fear. So I started writing the book simply for me a couple years into this, and ended up deciding that if I did it part memoir and part self-help, really telling people how I was making that transition from fear into faith, then that might be a helpful book. And so that's what I ended up writing. Of course, my husband is the most private person ever. So he agreed in concept to publishing the book. And then when it just came out May 15th, and he actually had a moment of wanting to take it all back, because he really did not want this much of himself in the world. And I said, well, honey, you agreed to this like months ago. You were excited about it months ago. He's like, yeah, but I wasn't really thinking about the people were going to read it, and particularly people that I knew were going to read it. So I guess I don't know what that says about his faith and my abilities as an author to the world. But I think he agreed to it only because he thought no one would read it, and now people are reading it. And so it is unsettling. But when you write memoir, you that's what you do. You put your stories in the world, and you hope that your truth is someone else's truth, and that they can help you. So here we are, putting our story in the world. But I really do. I actually have already heard from some people that feel it's helpful. One friend in particular who hadn't heard from in years, and she reached out on Instagram. She's sitting in an ICU with her husband, who's having a really horrible health experience. And she was sitting there reading my book and saying, oh my gosh, I am living chapter 11. It's the same thing's happening to me in your book. It's happening here in real life. So, sometimes we don't know why we write books. We certainly don't write them for the fame or the fortune, but that is why we write books, is because we connect with someone and we help someone. So if nothing else ever happens with this book, I will say it was a success, because it's already reached one reader who needed to read it. So.
Well, I've read it, and I know it's a great book, and I couldn't put it down, which is really rare for me.
Thank you.
Quite honestly, I mean.
Well, and you knew that my husband was alive. I know some people have said, oh my gosh. Well, and spoiler alert to anybody who's watching, my husband is living. We've been navigating this for 8 years now, and feel supremely lucky that is the case. He's navigated many more cardiac situations and some other things, but still trying to put one foot in front of the other every day, and walk in this path. And I think the main thing is that it really allowed us to make different choices in our life. We were living a pretty fast-paced life. He was commuting to New York every single week. We were not questioning that decision, right? We were thinking, oh, well, that's what you do. And his health crisis allowed us to make some different choices, to really think, what are we doing, and why are we doing that? And is that what we want to be doing if there's maybe little time left? So I will not be grateful for the disease he has, but I'm grateful for the choices that we've made because of it. So.
Well, good for you. I mean, I know, having read all this, I mean, how terrible what you guys went through. I mean, I can only imagine.
Yeah. So, but miraculously, he's still here. So.
Yeah. Well, how's his health?
It is, this is a disease you don't get rid of. There's no cure, there's no protocol, there's very little research. His health is as good as can be expected for a guy with two rare diseases, and that nobody knows what's going to happen next. But, interestingly, he's gotten involved here. We live in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's helping lead an effort to really build a world-class cardiac center here in Charlotte. I mean, because there's some pretty amazing doctors, and they're putting together a heart clinic here, and he's involved in that. And I don't think he would have done that, obviously, if he hadn't gone through the experience. We were getting care at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. But to have something here that's as world-class as that will be pretty exciting. And, as his doctor told him, Charlie, you should be dead 3 times over. So you better figure out why God still wants you here. And I don't know, maybe God wants him here to help to build a cardiac center in Charlotte, North Carolina. So anyway, that's what he's working on now. So.
I'll never forget that line from your book.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh boy, didn't that put it in perspective?
It did. Yeah. And I think, for both of us, we really started reevaluating what we were doing, how we were doing it. Were we spending enough time with our 4 daughters? Were we making memories with them? Luckily he's now seen, this happened right before our twins graduated from high school. And now he's seen them graduate from high school and college. 2 have gone to grad school. 1 got married. He's been here for a lot of really important events. So I'm grateful for that.
So, given all that you both have gone through, is there any way you would summarize, how it's affected your life?
I never take for granted the fact that either Charlie or I woke up today. It's helped me really see the wonder in the world. It's helped me know that this body, this brain, this heart that we kind of take for granted that it works. It's really a miracle every day. It's made me hold tightly to everyone that I love, including Charlie. And it's made me realize this is an amazing chance we get to be on this earth and to walk it. And so I notice a lot more sunrises and sunsets, and I walk in the park, and I'm grateful for the 60-year oaks that were here before I got here and will be here after I leave. And so it's helped me remember that my problems are not so big. So.
Well, it's really great that you had the courage and that, Charlie allowed you to write the book.
I said it feels a little bit like we're standing in Times Square naked, right? But that is when you write nonfiction, when you write memoir, that is what happens. So here we are. But we've already been joined with a lot of people saying me too, and I know. And so yeah, there's a community in this, and everyone has something, Brian. Not everyone has a rare cardiac disease, but certainly you've been touched by cancer or some other diagnosis or someone's death, that you didn't see coming. Even divorce can be as blindsiding as this. And so I think that always starts the process of, you live the first half of your life one way, and then something like that happens, and you really start to think, well, how am I going to live going forward, right? And so that's why I wrote it. I think there's a large community of people who are learning those lessons and trying to figure out. And certainly now the timing with COVID, we've all had to figure out, we've all been reset, right? With the pandemic, no one saw that coming. No one saw how that was going to affect our world. Many people have lost people through, COVID. So I did self-publish this book. I couldn't get a book contract. And even though I have a book contract for another book, but I really felt it was important that the time is now, that this is a very timely message for people who are coming out of the pandemic and kind of blinking their eyes and saying, what next? How do I live now? And that's the subtitle, living life now that nothing will ever be the same. I wrote in the epilogue, I think we've all just experienced our last ordinary hour. And so I felt it was a timely message for now. And if in the traditionally published world, it can take 18 months to get a book out. And I got this out in 6 months so that it could come out now and be timely. So
Yay.
Although it took me 2.5 years to write it and 6 months to publish it. So.
Well, I'm convinced that it's going to help a lot of people. There's just no doubt in my mind about that. And so I'm really glad that you got it out there. I mean, within the traditional publishing world, memoirs are just out of vogue.
They are. And even this, I'd written it as straight memoir, and then was talking with my agent, and she had said, that's going to be a really tough sell. I wonder if you rewrite it as more like self-help's the wrong word, but more spiritual direction, more, reflection as well as memoir. And so that's what I did. I took the straight memoir and mixed it with over 35 authors, poets, theologians whose work helped me and kind of wove that story through it. So, and still couldn't sell it, but here we are. Now we're out with the book, and so don't lose hope. Get your words in the world any way you can. I told Brian earlier, I definitely felt called to write this story. It definitely felt like I was working on another book, and this book just wanted to come out. And so I stopped. I put that one in. I'm 10 chapters in on another book, and I put that one down and just started working on this one, and here it is. So,
well, you know what's going to happen?
What?
Somebody's going to see it and see it so great, and they're going to publish it.
Well, yeah, I don't,
just like the other one.
Well, it would be nice. It would, it's funny because the 100-Story Home got rejected back in 2014. I self-published in 16. I got a contract in 17 by a publisher that had rejected me in 14. So you just never know. Like, I don't know. This got rejected by a couple of folks. There's a lot of people we could have that story with that say, oh, now we want to publish it. So that would be good. That would be a good ending to this story. But either way, the email from the ICU of my friend,
yes.
that's probably my best outcome for this book ever.
So now that the book is released, what are you doing to get the word out? For what
Well,
stuff are you making?
I've done a couple of podcast interviews. I've done 2 live events with people in Charlotte. Charlotte's a pretty big city. I'm not so worried about national release. If I could, get it to the people in Charlotte, be a local author and have it spread from there. I think my hope for this book is if I wrote a book that's compelling enough and a good enough book, people will hand it to friends, who hand it to friends, who hand it to friends, and then it'll spread that way. That's what happened with the 100-Story Home. So I'm hoping that The Last Ordinary Hour has a little bit of that piece as well. And then I am starting to write and speak again. Not write, I'm going to events again. So I do a lot of speaking events for women's groups or for homeless service agencies. But so hopefully the book and the message will get out that way as well. So.
Yes. Well, I hope so. And I will help do that too.
Thanks. Well, and I hope that for your book too. I know this is the hard part when you're a writer and you just kind of like being and writing and that's so fulfilling. To get out and sell and tell about it's a little hard. That's the harder part of writing, I think. So.
Yes. So I mentioned earlier that you lead, a set of courses, Women, Faith, and Story. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Women, Faith, and Story started in the pandemic. It launched October 12th in 2020. And really, I was trying to put together a place that I couldn't find on the internet, right? So I take classes in writing. I've taken classes in publishing. I take soul searching classes, just classes that are, workshops that talk about soul direction and spiritual journey. And I couldn't find all that in one place. And I have a lot of friends now who are coaches who do this kind of work. So I aggregated kind of all their skills on one site. And we do workshops. We're about to break for the summer, but we probably taught since October 12th, over 200 workshops in writing, publishing. We did painting classes online. I'm trying to help women, particularly, in the second half of life who, are not sure what they want to be next, have a place to explore, learn things, try something new, and figure out who it was they were meant to be. So Women, Faith, and Story is all of those things. We're also going to do a live event in October. We're going to start doing retreats. So we're going to hopefully be that online resource for women, leaders, and learners trying to figure out what their next chapter is.
Sounds exciting.
Thanks. It's been fun. It's been great to do in this pandemic when, you can't get together and you want to do meaningful things together. We've taught class, we've had coast to coast classes on the same call, someone in, California on the call with someone in Atlanta, and we teach with cameras on and audio on so that we're interacting and having a conversation. So that is what Women, Faith, and Story is. And we have a blog. So anyone out there who's writers, we like to help writers put their words in the world. So we accept submissions. You can share your story on our site, and we like publishing words from emerging writers. So.
Good, good. So you mentioned this a little bit, but more generally, what plans do you have for future books?
So the book that I put down as I was picking up The Last Ordinary Hour to finish that, I've realized out of the 100-Story Home, just amazing connections. I talk about the current of grace running through the world, and I think sometimes we don't see it if we're not looking for it. But when you do start noticing it, we are each connected in so many ways. I guess it's the connection of the Holy Spirit, and there's some amazing stories that come out of that. And I've just been collecting stories of people that I met along the way, either through the 100-Story Home or through the work with housing, with remarkable stories and remarkable connections. So I'm going to be writing other people's stories of this connection of grace that's running through the world. And people who, as I said, trusted the whisper to do what it was that they were being called to do. So it's going to be a collection of stories that to me are the evidence of this grace that's running through the world, and I guess the evidence of the Holy Spirit. So
Wonderful. Very cool. We'll look forward to that too.
thanks. Thank you.
Keep us posted on the timing.
Yeah, I will. Well, hopefully it'll take a little while. Let's see. The 100-Story Home took me 6 years to write and publish. I halved that for The Last Ordinary Hour. It was 3 years. And so maybe it'll be a year and a half. I don't know. I don't know if I'll get it done that fast, but
That sounds pretty aggressive.
That sounds pretty aggressive. I know it does. So, but at least maybe I'll get a working draft. Maybe I'll work on that draft this summer and trying to get it in shape to take somewhere. So
good, good, good. Well, Kathy, congratulations again on the new book. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I just hope that it really does well and that it helps a lot of people.
Thank you. And I really, the same for yours, Healing Our Divide. If you guys don't know about it or get it, Brian's probably not going to toot his own horn, but he's written this great collection of essays from amazing writers. He curated the whole thing, and it's certainly a book that we need in our time, in this time. So I wish the same for you. We'll see how our book twins take off in the world. So.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you, Kathy.
All right. Thanks.